So we're going to jump right in and go through the framework first, and then we're going to break down each of the different parts of your practice, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the feel, the people, the journey, all the different parts that add up to this magical experience in your practice. And so I want you guys to start having the thought process and to start thinking, what are all those little things that can go above and beyond to give someone a great customer service experience? You probably are even thinking of in your head different organizations or companies that you feel extreme loyalty to, that you love to go to. My wife and I just went out on a date last night, and we talked about how the food at the restaurant is so good. We don't even care that the waitresses are always terrible. They're never nice. They're never, on top of things. They're very short, but we're never going to stop going because it's our favorite restaurant to go to because we think the food is so good. And so that's a big part of creating a creatable experience, that it can cover other flaws. It's hard to be 100% the best at everything, but if you can go above and beyond in the most important areas, then it's going to really have a dramatic impact on everything else. So as Adam mentioned, the framework or the idea that I came up with from Disney Experience is actually from this book. So it's called Selling the Invisible. And in this book, Harry Beckwith talks about that if you're in a service-based business like we are, we're selling an intangible product. And so we have to really focus on the little details that are all going to add up to a magical experience. And so it's actually only a very small part of the book. I was my main takeaway, but it's only mentioned, I think, in like one chapter in a paragraph. But that was my takeaway from the book and how I came up with the concept of Disney Experience. So what I really want you guys to all start off with is think about an exceptional experience that you've had at a restaurant, at a business, and how that made you feel. First things that come to mind, for me, is a simple one. It's Chick-fil-A, right? Their team members do a great job, over the top customer service, always saying, my pleasure. Another example that comes to mind is one time we went to a hotel and we were in the front lobby. One of the bellhops asked our son what his name was, and his name is Brecken. And then by the time we got into our room, there was a cake with Brecken's name on it. Wasn't his birthday, anything. It was a dinosaur Rice Krispie cake that had Brecken's name on it. And that was literally 10 minutes after this random, guy who was just, we thought, chit-chatting with our son, asked him what his name, and all of a sudden in our hotel room, that's on the bed. If you've ever been on a cruise, I'm not sure how all the cruises do it, but one of the cruise lines that we went on, they would take the animals, they would take the towels in the room and they would turn them into animals. You'd have an elephant on our bed, and the next day we'd have a giraffe on our bed. And so all these little magical things that are like, it's just a minor little thing that only took a few seconds, that costs no money for them to turn a towel into an elephant, right? But it left a lasting impression. Even though we paid thousands of dollars for this cruise, this little free minor detail of turning a bathroom towel into a giraffe is the thing that we remember the most about the entire, one of the top things that we remember about the entire experience, right? And so one of my favorite examples that I read one time is from the company called Chewy. If you heard of them, they're a dog food supply, pet supply company. And this lady wrote a review, and she said that she contacted Chewy asking if she could return an unopened bag of dog food because her dog had passed away. And so they sent her a message back and they said, here's a full refund. We don't need you to return the food. Donate it to a local shelter. And they had flowers and a note delivered to her house from the person that she talked on the phone. And they also sent out a personalized painting to her of her dog, right? That's above and beyond. She's just trying to get a refund for a $50 bag of dog food, right? And they went above and beyond. And you think she's ever going to buy food from anywhere else? Most likely no, right? Because they found this incredible opportunity to go above and beyond, go to the next level, impact her life and leave a lasting impression. Your brand is your stand. And this is what we really are striving for, is to have a brand, that's something that we stand for. We first need to define what that is. What do you want to be known for? What's the style of practice that you want to have? How do you want to make people feel? Put that in the comments. Do you want to be a pediatric practice? Do you want to be a family practice? Do you want your practice to feel premium? Do you want your practice to feel top shelf? Do you want your practice to feel like you're walking into a home? How do you want people to feel when they're in your practice? And that's a huge part of a brand. The brand is all about how you make people feel. And so you have to start thinking in this manner, because this is going to be the framework upon which you take all different actions in your clinic. Is you have to have a brand that you stand for, and something that you're going to continue to refine and build upon throughout a practice member's journey in your office. All right, so there's all sorts of top level brands that we've all seen these logos for. And when you look at any of these logos individually, you have some sort of feeling, right, about these brands. You have some type of words that come to mind. When you look at Nike, you probably think just do it. You probably think of all the different athletes. You maybe think of Michael Jordan. You think of excellence. You think of high level performance, right? When you think of Chick-fil-A, when you look at Coca-Cola, Ritz-Carlton, Apple, all these different brands, what do people think when they see your logo, when they see your name, when they drive by your building, right? How do you want to have people? What is the experience and the impact that you want to have on people? And so you have to have that frame of mind, because your brand has so much value. I was actually out at MIT doing a master's program just a few weeks ago out in Boston. And we had the privilege of the owner of the Art of Shaving. If you guys ever heard of that, started in New York City, and all they sold was shaving supplies for men. Eventually, they ended up hiring barbers that would come and actually do fresh shaves as well. And at the height of it, as they were trying to scale this company, the owner sold the business for $60 million. But the business was actually losing $500,000 a month. They were negative in revenue for multiple years, losing $500,000 a month. And he sold it for $60 million. And he actually had a deal, he said, for $80 million. And then it was right when the financial crisis, 2008. And so that's when it got dropped to 60 million. But he said what they sold was not the shaving products. It was not, the barbers, and it was not the locations. What they sold was their brand. They had created such strong brand equity. That's what was being bought. There was nothing special about their products that anyone could be duplicated, their locations, but what they sold was the brand for $60 million. So the value of a brand is absolutely huge, right? And so brand loyalty is something that we want to strive for as a business. We want to strive for people to stay loyal to us because of how we've impacted it.
We often, here at Lucro, we often have conversations with our clients around the value of their practice. And so if you want to value someone's practice, you start by doing a very, very financial thing. You look at performance, profitability, and it's very financial. And then you get to a point where you then start to say, okay, you can earn $200,000 a year from this practice. You usually then apply a multiple to that. So this is what they call industry multiples. So you apply a multiple to that valuation, to that profitability level, to calculate the value of a practice. And then everyone wants to know, well, what's my multiple? And there's so many factors that influence a multiple. Probably the two biggest factors, well, it's probably the three biggest factors that impact the multiple value of your practice is your brand value, which can be translated into the size and robustness of your patient base. Is it robust? Is it big? Is there a continuation? Do you have people who have been coming for years and years and years to your practice? The other one is the owner themselves and how involved they are in the practice. And then the third one is the marketing foundation and ability to attract new patients. And if you start to think how all three of those things are directly influenced by what people perceive. So they drive past your practice. What do they perceive? Is that something? Is that a good brand value? Do people want to engage with your practice? All of those three things. And now, when you talk about a multiple, you got to understand something. You're making $200,000-300,000 a year in profit, and your multiple's 1.5. What if your multiple was 2.5? Think of that difference. Think about how much more money you can walk away with from your practice with that multiple changing. The multiple is the most important thing. It's why all these SaaS companies make so much money, because they trade at such high multiples. So these intangible things are actually the things at the end of the day that is going to make the biggest difference if you ever sell your practice to how much money you make. The profitability is one thing, but the multiple effect that brand value can have is astronomical. And it's not something like, oh, okay, great. It's no, this is fundamentally important to building a successful practice. Fundamentally important.
Yeah, one of my favorite studies that they actually call it the Pepsi paradox, is they've done this research study over and over and over again, and they've taken rabid Coca-Cola fans. You maybe all know one that has Coca-Cola memorabilia all throughout their house. My wife's grandma was one of these ladies, and she just had Coca-Cola polar bears and Coca-Cola this and that, and she just was a raving Coca-Cola fan. And they've taken these raving Coca-Cola fans and they've done taste tests with them, and they've given them blind taste tests of Pepsi and Coke. And which one do you like better? And majority of these raving Coca-Cola fans actually prefer the taste of Pepsi. And they're distraught, when they find out that they actually prefer the taste of Pepsi. And so logic would stand that, hey, you like Pepsi better, you should start drinking Pepsi. Do you think any of these raving fans start buying Pepsi, even though they realize they actually like Pepsi better? No, none of them. 0% of these people want to switch to Pepsi, even though they all think majority of them think it tastes better, right? And so this is the exact premise that we're trying to establish, is that it's so easy if you don't have good brand value, is you're only as good as your last visit. You're only as good as your last interaction with a practice member or a patient in your office. And so there's so many places, I'm sure you've all have done it. You go there once, it's not a great experience, and you never go there again, right? But then on the opposite, you have a great experience time after time after time. If you had that same experience, then you can forgive them, you can forget, you can move on, right? But if that's the first time you ever have and you have no brand value or built up equity with that organization, then they might as well be like they don't even exist, right? And so I'd love to hear, what brands are you guys loyal to? Put that in the chat. What are brands that, hey, I always buy Nike shoes, or I always buy this type of product, or this type of water, or this food, or this clothing item, or this makeup brand? What are those brands that you feel like you have extreme loyalty to? Put those in the comments. But even more importantly, think about why. What have they done as an organization to build up that brand value that you don't ever want to go, and you see their competitor, and you trash their competitor, even though just because you're so loyal, right? Just like you have a favorite sports team, and all of a sudden everybody that plays them is your, bitter rival, right? Think about that, and how can you become that exact thing, or anyone else would ever consider any other health clinic, chiropractic clinic other than yours would be, I would never go anywhere else besides your clinic, right? That's what we want to establish for our office. So now we're going to jump right into it. And so, like I said, we're getting a lot of great comments coming in. Adam's very loyal to Adidas. We had a great share from Misty that she wants her practice to feel like a guest, that they belong, that they feel heard, that they feel seen, that they get a different experience and they get results from a whole body wellness. Now we're going to jump into really the tangible action steps. Like I said, this is where I want us to build together a list of what we all can do, what I'm doing, what you all are doing, and what is possible. So first of all, let's put aside what we're doing right now, and let's think about ideal. What is the ideal sites that they would see of your building from the outside and when they come in on the inside? What is the ideal world? Adam mentioned my wife, Megan. She's really the head of our Disney experience and our culture in our clinic. And her example when we do this training with our team is she said, in her ideal world, as soon as someone walks in the front door, cannons of confetti would shoot out every single time they walk in the front door. And they would be greeted with over the top excitement, like they just won the Super Bowl and we hadn't seen, our long lost son or daughter or mother in years who we thought had died, had just walked through the front door. That's how she wants people to feel every time they walk in the front door. Now, shooting cannons of confetti, isn't realistic, right? But how can we have that? How can we try and emulate that exact same feeling of over the top excitement to greet someone, to see someone, to make them feel like they're a superstar and celebrated that they walked through the front doors of our clinic, like a celebrity just walked through the front door of the clinic every single time. So think of, even unrealistic things or over the top ideas or concepts that we can implement even a small fraction of throughout all these different parts. Like I said, we're going to go through the sights, the sounds, the smells, the feels, the people, and the journey. And those are the attributes that we're going to break down over the course of this masterclass. So for me, I'm immediately thinking of the outside of my building right now. I'm thinking of what is the look of the outside of my building? What do I want it to look at? Like, where is the location of my building? What neighborhood or city or part of a city am I in? And how is that going to make somebody feel? When you say, I'm right off of, for my clinic, I'm right off of I-35 on Mill Civic in West Des Moines. That's going to incite some differences, versus if I were to say, I'm in a different location, they're going to think, oh, that's a nice part of town. Oh, that's easy to get to. I know exactly where that's at. Or, oh, I got to drive there. Or, oh, that's kind of hard to get to. Or that's not a very nice area, right? So immediately, even just people never even stepping foot in your clinic, right? Now, if you're like, oh crap, I'm in a bad location, right? Maybe that's something you need to consider for your next location or where you are. Or if you're opening another location, it's a huge, huge factor. We're not as much of a location based, where people are driving by and just randomly stopping in like a Starbucks, and we need to have ones on all different corners. But we do need to have, the impact of where we're located and the feeling that can have on people is immediate. And we need to think about all these little details because all these little details add up. And that's what you're going to find is all the things that we're talking about today. It's all in the details to add up to the magical experience of Disney. It's the sights, the sounds, the smells, the feels, the people, the characters, all adding up to a magical Disney experience. It's not just one thing that's being done. It's a lot of micro little things that all add up to this intangible magical experience. So now we're on the inside of the office, right? What do people think when they walk in? For our office, we want them to think, this is the place to be. Look at all of these people. Look how busy this place is. And just like when you go into a busy restaurant, you're like, this place must be good. If you go to an empty restaurant at primetime dinner on a Friday night and there's nobody there, what do you probably think? This place is probably not good. We probably made the wrong decision, right? Immediately. You haven't tasted the food. You haven't talked to a single person, right? But the place is empty, right? So again, block scheduling, it's a whole nother topic. It's a requested topic I think we could dive into on a later date, but that's a huge importance where you can create that atmosphere even if you're not at that full capacity yet, right? We want our clinic to not look like a traditional medical hospital or a clinic. We don't want the sliding glass door where someone's got to come in and you feel like you're interrupting them. They got to open this window to talk to you, right? We want to be uplifting in our clinic. When it's raining outside, we want people to see that we're going to walk them out to their car with an umbrella. When it's snowing outside, we want to see that we're going to go wipe down their windshield before they get back to their car after their care in our office. One of our over-the-top ideas is we want to have, eventually, we think it'd be awesome to have in our office like a greeter. If you've ever been to a Chick-fil-A, sometimes they have those older gentlemen or older ladies that are just walking around making people's day, handing out free ice cream cones, and just chit-chatting, with people. That's something that we thought about. That would be so cool. What if we just had this wonderful, retired person that just all they want to do was hang out, talk to people, love on people, tell stories, have a good time. Who wouldn't want to just come out and hang out with that person and have those great interactions and help with the flow of the office? So what are all these little things? In our office, we want to help transition people, from where they come into to where they want to be, right? And we want people to see that people came in in a wheelchair, they came in with a walker, they came in with a cane, and they no longer have that anymore. So again, think of the sites, think of your office. What are all the sites that are currently happening? What do you want to happen? What are some immediate takeaways? And then what are some far big ideas that maybe we can't do immediately right now, but hey, that's very aspirational. And how can we even get a sliver of that excitement and inspirational Disney experience in the practice? All right, so the next one is the sounds. What do you want people to hear, right? We're going to the next level of all the different senses within the human body. We want people to, is it music? In our office, we're really big. We play Christian music throughout the whole year. We want to have hope, uplifting music, doing their whole journey. During Christmas, we'll add in, some Christmas music. But other than that, we're like uplifting, hope-filled, Christian radio, Christian music the entire time. That's very important. What do you want when people are just sitting in the waiting room? What do you want them to hear? We want people to hear laughter. We want people to hear happy conversations. We want people to be in agreement, people to be excited. We want rapport to be happening, right? We want everyone to be greeted hello with their name. We want them to be said bye with their name, right? We want testimonials being shared for other people to hear, so that people that come in on their first visit or they're just started under care, they realize the power of what we can do and how their bodies can heal. And they might not realize those things. So we want them to purposely overhear conversations. We have semi-open adjusting rooms because we want them to be, while we're educating one person, we want other people next door to also be educated as well. Maybe just as important as what we do want them to hear is what do we not want them to hear? If you do have to have a tough conversation with a patient, that needs to be taken into a private room. If you do have to hold another team member accountable, that needs to happen in the back office, right? Those are all great points. Absolutely. If you are doing a soft wave or a shock wave in your office, maybe those can be some painful sounds that people make. Getting those different treatments in your clinic, right? So that's a great point. I love that. Great perspective for sure. All right, so now we're jumping into the smells. What is the smells that you want to have in our office? We want just a clean smell. We just want no bad smells. Some offices want to have essential oils. Maybe you have a signature smell. Maybe you want to use lavender, or maybe there's, vanilla, or I don't know what your sense of preference is, but as soon as you walk in, you have this refreshing, clean ocean breeze, smell. Obviously no chemicals in our clinics, right? But what is it that exactly you want it to smell? Is it just, hey, there's no smell at all. This is clean. This is a healthy environment. This is a healthcare clinic, make sure there's not any bad smells, right? And this is similar to the sites, right? It's like clean is a huge part that we are very strive for with our clinic. Is we're trying to organize people's bodies. We're trying to adjust them. We're trying to help them clean up their health, right? So we feel like that cleanliness is a huge part of our clinic that we need to embody. If we're disorganized, if the clinic floor is dirty, then I'm going to have, well, maybe they're not going to do a great job of cleaning up my health. Maybe they're not going to do a great job, of being organized and adjusting my body the way it's supposed to be if they can't even keep their office in alignment, right? Elizabeth said a lot of people have sensitivities to smells, which is totally true. We have a good coffee machine that makes great smelling coffee, right? So that's where, like I said, we go with the clean, almost no smell, just clean office. We don't do essential oils for that reason in our clinic. So again, that's a decision that you need to make. Our preference is no smell. Now it's the feels, right? We talked a lot about brand. I mean, this is really what it comes down to, is how do you make people feel, right? And this is really what matters at the end of the day, is how people feel, right? You can see some reviews, from our clinic of how we've impacted people and how we make them feel, whether it be positive, professional feeling, excited, life-changing, all of these different feelings that they could have, right? So in our office, some of the things that we have listed out that we want to feel like it's home away from home. We've had a number of, practice members over the years that feel like, hey, this is my safe place. Their home might be chaotic, but Vero feels like their real home because of how safe they feel. It feels like hope. Everyone else is telling them these are your conditions that you have to live with. This is the dire situation of your health. You're on all these medications, you have these surgeries, you have diabetes, everyone else is talking negatively. We're bringing positivity, we're bringing hope, we're bringing opportunity for them to improve when everyone else has told them there's nothing you can do about it, you just have to live with it, this is the life that you have. Or we can give them an opportunity to be better. We want people to feel Jesus in our office. We're very faith-centered with our Christian music, with how we pray. We want people to know, there's a bigger purpose in their life, and we want to help them achieve and accomplish their bigger purpose for their life through improving their health. We want people to feel safe, in our office. Again, being in a great part of town, being a great environment, having control, of the clinic, right? There's been different times where we've had to have conversations with, older gentlemen who say things, not the right comments to younger women, right? And so when those happen, they need to be corrected as soon as possible because they need to be feel safe. If ever there are incidences, people need to be feel heard. We want our office to feel like a place of healing. We want it to feel like somebody's happy place, and when they walk in the door, again, confetti is shooting off cannons. Everyone's excited. This is a place where everyone knows their name. Everyone loves to see them. That's just not a normal feeling, for a lot of people. They might not get that, from their spouse. They might not get that from their parents. They might not get that from their work. They might not get that in other places. So how can we be that light? How can we be that location? My wife, Megan, she's like, I want it to feel like my favorite pair of sweatpants, that are 15 years old, that are falling apart, but they look terrible. She's like, I won't wear these out in public, but I'm wearing these every time I want to get comfortable at the house, and she's like, that's what I wanted to feel like, that favorite pair of jeans or that favorite pair of sweatpants that are just broken in, or they're perfect fit. And, you can just relax when you walk through the doors, right? Because so many places you walk into a medical clinic, you see the white coat, you see the stethoscope, you hear the drill going on in the background, you see babies crying, right? And that's not the environment that we want to have, and the feeling that we want to have impacted on other people, right? We want people to feel like we're their raving fans. We just had actually a gentleman that came in our office. Older gentleman had a trucker hat, and he wanted everybody in the clinic to sign his hat. And that was really, really fun for our team, as well, for them to feel like celebrities signing his hat. Now, the people component, right? This is huge, right? We're talking about the Disney experience for the patient, for the practice member, but what's the Disney experience also for your own team members? Do you also have a journey mapped out of how you want your onboarding process, your hiring process, your training process, your ongoing, how are you celebrating your team's anniversaries, birthdays, big wins, performances? What's the environment of the team within your organization, right? And so that's a huge part. That's another masterclass as well. We actually have an entire masterclass. We can get the link drop for that on team. And we also just did a masterclass on office tour. If you want to see the inside of my clinic, we had an entire masterclass on that just recently. I would highly recommend watching. But what do we want the people to embody? Okay. For us, we want our people to live out our core values. We have 6 core values. We want them to be those out, and we want those to be impacting on all of the patients that come in the front door, right? So that they can be in alignment with our core values. We want them to trust one another, and we want them to give trust and have trust, right? We want them to know that the team has each other's back, and they also have the patient's back, and we respect them, we appreciate them, and we're here for them. A lot of people, when they come into your clinic, they're going to be in pain. They might be grumpy, they might not be happy, right? And that's something that we've really realized is some of those most grumpy, unhappy people on their first visit turn into, and you show them love, you show them appreciation, you talk to them in a loving manner, those become your biggest raving fans. One of my favorite is we have a guy in our office named Willie, and that was exactly him. He was grumpy, he was mad, he was upset, he didn't want to be there. His wife made the appointment for him, he was in pain. And now this guy gives a hug to every single person. He tells all of our team members how much he loves them. I'm going to get emotional talking about it. I mean, it's just his life has been changed, and he's impacted and changed our lives as a result, right? And so putting the right people in the right seats, creating a culture that feels like you don't ever have to work. That's always been my mantra, is if I love what I do every day, I don't ever have to work a day in my life, right? And so how do we embody this ourselves, and how do we find the right people and then help them be able to express their greatest version of themselves and have the impact on everybody that walks through the door? If you don't have core values, sidebar, highly, highly recommend establishing those so that you can really live them out and be a part of your culture as well. Now, this is the final stage. We've talked a lot about all these different topics. Like, so we've talked about the sights, we've talked about the sounds in your clinic, the smells or the no smell. We've talked about the feels, we've talked about the people, and now we really want to put it together into a journey. And so this is a great book. If you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it, by Joey Coleman. And a big part of this is he advocates for mapping out an entire customer journey, from a first interaction, to lifelong loyalty, and someone under care for life. And so what are all the little different touch points that you can do along the entire journey? How do you want to interact with them from that first interaction on the phone, how you talk with them, all the way to them being under care for life? So I highly recommend, as an action step from this masterclass, is write out that journey. Write out the outline, first interaction, maybe be on a phone call, maybe it's on an interaction on your website, an interaction with your Google page, an interaction with a Facebook advertisement, interaction with a meeting at a chamber, whatever that first interaction is. How can you improve that interaction? How can you improve that verbiage, right? And then the scheduling, of that person. How can you make that smoother? How can you improve and make that easier for the person to go from interested to on the schedule? And then how can you improve the journey for them to show up for that initial appointment in their office? Like we talked about, then when they do walk in the front of your office building, are you greeting them by name? Are you walking around the front desk? Are you giving them a double handed handshake? Are you showing them, hey, here's the coffee bar, here's where the restroom is? In our office we have adjustments, nice play on words. I know one of the people put in that they put their new patients on a board, right? When they walk in, it says, welcome to that specific individual person. What is your entire process mapped out for that initial visit in the office? Each team member's verbiage is that dialed in to give the best experience and help them understand what the root cause of their health conditions are. Do you have a clean bathroom? In our bathrooms as well, we have hairspray, we have tampons, we have basic cosmetic things to just make their life a little easier. We have diapers, we have a changing station, make it easier for moms, make it easier for different people, no matter what they have coming in with, right? Biggest thing I always talk about from rapport is we want to make people feel like the most interesting person in the world. You've all seen those Dos Equis, commercials, most interesting man in the world. How can we make other people think, that they're the most interesting person in the world? By building rapport, by asking questions, by being intentional and in depth with them. We give a t-shirt away when they come back for their reported findings. When they finish their care plan, they get a tumbler. As they go throughout the journey, they get different gifts as they reach different milestones, a number of visits in the office. Our doctors give a phone call after the first visit, after the doctor's report of findings, after multiple visits under care. They get individual reach outs from doctors checking in. We have different checkpoints throughout the journey. We do all different fun activities in the office. We give away pies. The week of Thanksgiving, last year we gave away over 900 pumpkin pies. The week of Thanksgiving, leading up to 12 days of Christmas, we do what we call 12 days of Christmas, where we have little trinkets, gifts, fun activities in the office. We do summer activities. We do team picnics. We have volunteer opportunities. We do drives with different organizations and nonprofits in the business throughout the entire year so that they can contribute to something larger than themselves and be a part of giving back to the community. We have a thank you card, or not a thank you card, a card tracker in the office. Anyone, that we want to thank, send a thank you card. Anyone that we want to give a sympathy card, anyone that's had, a graduation, a death, something great, something positive, something negative, whatever it may be, any opportunity that we can write a handwritten card to someone, we want to track that and we want to send that card to them as quickly as possible, whether they got a new puppy, they graduated, from kindergarten or anything, in between. We want to celebrate, doing life with people, right? And so all these different parts of the journey, from the interaction, from your website, do you give kids stickers? What do you have, testimonials on the wall? There's so many different avenues and little details, and so I really just want to open your mind of what's possible, how you can go above and beyond, because it all is in the details, right? And so I love this quote to end on from Walt Disney. There's no magic in magic. It's all in the details. And so that is really the framework of giving an incredible Disney experience in your office, is analyze the details, go above and beyond, figure out where you can deliver a magical experience. Hopefully that was extremely valuable. Like I said, hopefully your mind is racing with ideas and concepts and implementations and what you can do to give the Disney experience, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the feels, the people, and the entire journey mapped out. So that'd be my top action step for you guys, is map out your journey, map out all those different segments for your patients, for your practice members, for your team members, and give an incredible Disney experience.